Mario Kart World is about to keep me busy for years. Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today I want to talk about the roadmap of Mario Kart World. When we take a look at Mario Kart 8, it's had quite a bit of changes over the years. When it initially came out, then the free DLC update with 200cc, then the expansion pass, all of this still on Wii U, then Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and then we had some free updates alongside the Booster Course Pass years later. Mario Kart 8 became a substantially larger game by the time that Booster Course Pass ended late 2023 versus what it was when it originally came out back on Wii U in 2014. Looking at Mario Kart World, just what we have with the base package, I already feel overwhelmed with all the different things I can do, and I want to dive into that. But I also want to talk about what's next for Mario Kart World because I think there's quite a bit, and there's a lot to be excited about here. So that's what we're getting into today. But before going forward, let me point out I have a goal to reach 60,000 subscribers, so if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. So I will be getting into the DLC possibilities for Mario Kart World. I think they are extremely likely, and I think we're probably going to be getting some announcements really soon. But what I want to focus on here is just what we have with the base package so far first, because really I think with what we have right now, it could take me years before I really fully get my full fill of everything this game has to offer. We already understand that there are over 200 different variations with the different routes you can take throughout the different tracks in Mario Kart World. And we know the different tracks have different alternate paths and such, and then within the free roam it's a giant open world that you can explore and do different things or different challenges and such. But when you break that down, there are nearly 400 P-Switch missions, there are nearly 200 Peach medallions, and there are a variety of question mark blocks, usually 5 per main area, but there are 10 in Crown City. And there are random other little things to find like Nabbit and such, and other cool little things like the UFOs and trucks and things like that. And I do think you can spend a lot of time just there, especially with the P-Switch missions, because some of them are very, very challenging. But then of course you have all your typical Mario Kart things. You have your Grand Prix, you have Versus Race, you have the online gameplay, you have the time trials, and all of that's going to take you the amount of time it generally would for any other Mario Kart game. But then we also have Knockout Tour on top of that, so it's a little bit more to do there. And there is also a mirror mode. There was some doubt there would be a mirror mode in this game. There is a mirror mode. So that adds a decent more to do in this game. Now, we don't know about a 200cc. We did have an interview with the Mario Kart World producer where it was suggested they would consider it in the future, perhaps very similar to how it was added to Mario Kart 8. But we'll get into DLC a little bit later. But a recent realization I had about Mario Kart World that led me to kind of talk about this is not everything I just mentioned already, which I do think is a lot already. It's that in this game, the tracks are dense with different things you can do. There are a variety of different shortcuts and possibilities. And when we consider the mechanics with the wall riding and the rail riding, and the new trick mechanics, and other little discoveries like turning your camera and aiming your items in different angles, when you start to consider all of these other little things you can do in the game, and how you can go about using them to improve your racing, that's where I think there is a lot to sort of sift through and get better at. Because I'm racing through these tracks and I'm enjoying it, sure, but there's also a little bit of frustration because my knowledge of these tracks in comparison to Mario Kart 8, well, it's just not even close. And the tracks in Mario Kart 8 were far more simple. There's a lot more potential for shortcuts and stuff in Mario Kart World. And me exploring through the free roam, doing the P-Switch missions and such has given me more opportunity to experiment a little bit more, get a little bit of a better handle of this game. But I still feel like I'm just scratching the surface. We are seeing some people figure out some incredible, crazy tricks, some incredible, crazy shortcuts. And what's neat about Mario Kart World is that you have this entire giant Mario Kart playground to explore and experiment, especially when you account for the rewind feature. So you can go ahead and try to do one of these crazy tricks you may have seen online so you can get better at doing these amazing shortcuts so you can then perform better when you do online races and such. But it's going to take a lot of work, it's going to take a lot of trial and error, and this rewind feature makes it a lot more convenient. But even when I go about this process, I see just how much is possible. This game is deep, and I really think it's interesting that there have been people complaining online that Mario Kart World just doesn't have the depth of Mario Kart 8, and I just think that's a shallow statement to make. I think there's actually a lot more that is possible in Mario Kart World than there is in Mario Kart 8. We just need more time to figure it out. This game just came out. We spent so many years on Mario Kart 8. Mario Kart World, I think for years, we're going to be testing and playing and figuring out more we can do. And what's neat about Mario Kart World in comparison to 8 is that they've streamlined this experimentation process with the free roam, with the rewind feature, making it a little bit more accessible to a larger group of people to get deeper into the mechanics of the game. So with all this in mind, I see myself coming back to Mario Kart World for years to come, having fun with friends and such, playing online, and learning more and more about the tracks and how to better use the different tricks to race better on these tracks. And I'm sure we're going to be discovering things even years later. And that's just with what we have in the base game. I think we're still just scratching the surface here, as I highlighted in the introduction to this video. When we look at how Mario Kart 8 started and what it became, it's a vastly different expanded game. And I actually think this time around, it's going to work a bit differently. It's going to be a little bit more consistent. When Mario Kart 8 came out initially back on Wii U, and they announced that expansion pass for Mario Kart 8, this is one of the first DLC waves we ever saw from Nintendo. This is Nintendo finally getting into the DLC game. And so throughout the Wii U era and throughout the Switch era, Nintendo was figuring out how to handle DLC for their different games, and they were also seeing how Mario Kart could be such a big seller on the Switch platform with these consistent evergreen sales, and that's part of the reason why they introduced the Booster Course Pass to give Mario Kart 8 players a little bit more to enjoy, keep that momentum going until the Switch 2 era with Mario Kart World. But with that understood, I think they're going to now look at Mario Kart World as something that will be very similar, and they started off the generation with Mario Kart World as the launch title. So from day one, everyone's already playing Mario Kart World, and I think with the next Nintendo Direct, very likely there are going to be some announcements for this game, like actual updates very early on. I'm not saying it's going to be paid DLC immediately, although I do think eventually there will be a paid expansion pass to this game. They may be patient with that because of the initial asking price of the game, but I do think eventually they will move in that direction. However, at first, I do think there are going to be free updates, and even after the paid expansion, I'm sure there are going to be free updates. I think the main point about this is to keep Mario Kart World relevant for years to come. Mario Kart World has an extremely strong chance to be the best-selling game on Switch 2 throughout its entire life, basically, because that's what Mario Kart 8 was throughout the entire life of Switch 1, and also Wii U, I might add. So I think Nintendo is going to support Mario Kart World now, knowing what they can do with Mario Kart even better than before. So I'm sure they are planning some different free updates, and we've discussed already some potential free updates already. We've noticed how there are some very curiously missing costumes in Mario Kart World for Donkey Kong and Pauline. These two characters only have one alternate costume, and when we talk about other characters that are comparable, like Rosalina, or I don't know, Mario or Luigi, or Wario, all these other characters have way more costumes than Donkey Kong, one of the most important characters in Nintendo history, and Pauline arguably is also fairly important, at least comparable to some of the other princesses, and she only has one alt. It's strange, unless you consider the involvement of Pauline alongside Donkey Kong, and perhaps Donkey Kong Bonanza, as we discussed before, is coming out next month. There may be a plan there to add some additional costumes when Bonanza's coming out, so there can be some cross-promotion between these games, and this might also tie into the missing Diddy Kong and perhaps other Kongs as well that we have not seen in the roster. The Mario Kart World producer did talk about how, or rather, said he could not talk about what's going on with Diddy Kong, implying that there is some kind of plan there. And we've also seen that in the credits for Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong and Pauline have a very interesting interaction with each other, so it does seem like there's something going on there. But that, I believe, is just scratching the surface. Yeah, I think they're going to add Diddy Kong and potentially other Kongs, perhaps as a cross-promotional campaign for Donkey Kong Bonanza next month, and that will also include costumes for DK and Pauline. But I think there's more. Just looking at the free roam, for example. Listen, I enjoy the free roam, I've talked about that already, but, you know, it is a little divisive, and it's not perfect. There are things that can be improved upon, sure. Like, for example, some way to sort of catalog all the P-Switch missions and such. What I really like about the P-Switch missions, beyond them having a great deal of variety and there being some extra challenges, is that there's also a time and you can break your record. But are you really expected to drive independently to each of these P-Switch missions every time you want to go back to a particular one? No, I think they should eventually add in some sort of list so you can just go through a menu and automatically warp to that P-switch mission. I think that'd be a great idea. Maybe also track the time you have on there in a particular menu. I think something like that should be added eventually. Especially consider how cool some of the P-switch missions are that are basically like really cool alternate track races. That's content they already have in the game. I just think they need to share it out and support it a little bit better. And so adding some sort of menu to catalog or organize all these P-switch missions would be a great idea as a free update in the not so distant future. But continuing this train of thought on improving free roam, what else could they do? Well, they could also do something about marking where you found your Peach medallions, for example, so you have a better chance of finding all of them in the world. And what's also interesting, there's plenty of space to add more Peach medallions, more P-switch missions, so they can expand on that content on top of that once they add better ways to track these different challenges. But let's now circle back to 200cc. It seems like there's some consideration for 200cc in the future, but we don't know if they're going to add it per se. Perhaps they've looked at 200cc and decided it wasn't a good fit for Mario Kart World, and maybe they're thinking about using it in a different way, or maybe the producer, Kosuke Abuki, was just being coy and they're just going to straight up add 200cc later on. I do wonder though if maybe they want to rethink how they use 200cc. Maybe they want to make some track adjustments for 200cc so it's better suited for that extra level of speed, which would then require a little bit more work, a little bit more time, and perhaps that's why it's not in the game right now. They want to let everyone enjoy the base package, and then eventually they'll add something like this a little bit later. And going a step further with this, if maybe down the line they are going to add more Peach medallions and more P-switch missions within the open world, and they're also going to add a 200cc mode that has some different track adjustments for this new speed, perhaps some of these new challenges that they might add in are also only applicable for the 200cc mode, where with that extra speed, different things can be accomplished. If you have a lot more speed, then you can go to a lot of other places when you jump off ramps, for example. Perhaps they could even treat this kind of like the master mode that was added to Breath of the Wild back on Switch, where yes, it was a harder mode, but there were also little extra challenges that were added all throughout the world, including even different platforms that were quite challenging to get to. But on that note, what might they do for paid content? I think over the years they'll add things like I mentioned, perhaps even more costumes as more cross promotion, or even other new characters for different games. I personally am not going to rule out the possibility of them adding other Nintendo characters outside the Mario world. Personally, I am missing my main Link, so I do hope he makes a comeback eventually. And perhaps when it comes to characters outside the Mario universe, maybe that's where they can expand things a little bit. Maybe when they eventually do announce some sort of expansion pass, this can include a whole other area to explore. Maybe what they do is that they eventually add like a Nintendo land or something like that that you can explore that's saying to the side or a different part of the map. And it's not quite as large as the main map, maybe it's half the size or a quarter of the size, but it's enough of a size where they can still have races intertwined with each other, interconnected tracks, and there are different variations there. I think that would be something very cool they can do, and I could even see them doing this more than once. Maybe they had a second island eventually as well, but not a part of the same yearly wave of DLC. Maybe this is after years of DLC. But what they do in between are different free updates, as I've discussed already, and perhaps some of these updates could be a little bit more extensive than what I've already talked about. Like, for example, what if they introduce like an all-cup tour, where it's literally that. You do one entire race around the entire map. And maybe there's extra customization there. I know you can do something like that in Versus, but it's not continuous, at least not from what I've seen so far. It'd be really cool if you can just create an all-cup tour. We've seen an all-cup before in Mario Kart Double Dash, so if they were to eventually add something like that for Mario Kart World, I think that would be very cool. It would be a lot, it would be intense, but it would be a nice, fun addition. Another random thing they could do, they could add like a story or side quests to the free roam. And something I completely forgot to talk about until towards the end of this video is the battle mode. The battle mode currently, last I checked, only has two different modes, Balloon Battle and Coin Runners. There's so much more potential there. There are a variety of different battle modes in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, and I really feel like there's some missed opportunity here with the battle mode within this giant interconnected world. They could do so much more. We speculated or theorized about different ideas before they showed us what battle mode was, how they could maybe take advantage of the world, maybe it could be almost kind of like a battle royale sort of thing, but within battle. Knockout Tour seems to be kind of like that idea, but within the racing format, maybe they can consider a new style of battle mode that takes better advantage of the interconnected world. There's really so much possibility, so much potential. they can continue to find different ways to expand Mario Kart World over the next few years. I think really they could keep Mario Kart World relevant for potentially not even just like the next 8 years, but perhaps the next 10. I have this crazy idea that if they were able to support the Switch for as long as they did, they might be able to support the Switch 2 for even longer. Will they? We shall see. I'm assuming at least 8 years, but possibly they could go for more. Will people want that? Well, I guess we'll see. Maybe Switch 2 won't have the legs of Switch 1 and will actually have a shorter generation. That part remains to be seen. Regardless, I am certain that Mario Kart World is going to keep me busy for years. But how about you? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.